You're listening to Bold Hearts, Big Moves, the show for female entrepreneurs who want it all: a thriving business, deep self-love, and fulfilling relationships. I'm Erin Anderson, and each week we will dive into how to set stronger boundaries, make empowered choices, and show up in life and business with boldness, authenticity, and heart. Because let's be real, the money you make is directly related to the love that you have for yourself and the strength of your relationships. So if you're ready to lead with love and make those big moves with those bold hearts, let's dive in. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Bold Hearts, Big Moves. I have with us my good friend Amma, and now I'll be honest, Amma, you're going to have to tell me your last name because it's really hard for me to pronounce.
Tanasathi.
Thanasanti.
The
Thanasanti.
the T is aspirated, so it doesn't sound like a tha, it's a ta. Tanasanthi.
Tanasanti. Okay. There we go. There we go. But she and I have been sitting here. We've been having a really wonderful conversation. We've chatted a few times. And you know, Amma has a very, very beautiful story, and I'm going to have her share it with you guys here because she has been studying the power of meditation for the last 45 years. Lived in, Buddhist monasteries for several of those 45 years. And I'll let her share her story a little bit more. But, we've been talking about attachment theory and how attachment to stories, especially. And I think that, people, our attachment to people is kind of like part of our attachment to those stories, and how that can keep us back a lot of the time. And so I'm going to go ahead and let Amma tell you guys her story a little bit, and like some of the awakenings that she's starting to realize right now. And what I really want you guys to pay attention to is, we were talking about like some of the things that are happening that were happening at her monastery, and I see a lot of these same things as a Christian in different Christian sects. I see it in Judaism. I see it across the spectrum. So we're going to get into, attachment theory, how we can attach to our own story and love it, and then how we can use those things to better our mission, our purposes, and through that, our businesses. So without further ado, Amma, let's hear your story.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for welcoming me. And it's an honor to be here and to be able to speak with your community. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah. I wandered into a class at University of California at Santa Cruz in 1979, taught by Jack Engler. And he was telling stories of remarkable Buddhist meditation masters, and it just lit me up. So I was 17, so you can do the math. I'm 63 now. And I was sitting on the edge of my seat and I was completely riveted with like, wow, you can completely give your life to awakening. And I was a yes. So from the first month of that class, I knew without a shadow of a doubt, that I wanted to dedicate my whole life to awakening.
Mm.
And Jack Engler is a prominent psychologist, and he was renowned for saying, you have to develop a self before you can let a self go.
That's true. That is so true. Yes.
And so this kind of understanding of psychological interest was something that was imprinted in me from the beginning. And I have very much been interested in that all along. So after 10 years, I went on a pilgrimage and I met the great forest meditation masters that I heard about. And I met Deepa Ma, who was an extraordinary meditation master. Boy, I could spend a whole hour just talking about her and the impact she had and her story and why it was so inspiring. And eventually I made my way to the Buddhist monastery in England and I joined the nuns community there. And I was, filled with inspiration, filled with like, yes, I want to do this. But when I first arrived, the nuns community was unsettled and at distressed. And eventually, over the 20 years that I lived in that community, we did a lot of inner work ourselves and was able to consolidate so that we weren't selling ourselves out for attention for the monks. We had the ability to resolve our differences. We were clear, we were confident. And interestingly enough, when we were kind of all over the place and we were selling each other out, the senior monks pitied us. But when we were clear and confident and strong, they were not happy about that. And so there was this whole process to subjugate us that was deliberate. And what happened is that I had a very strong intuition that what they were doing was harmful. And
Hmm.
so in a ceremony, I spoke up and I did it respectfully. I bowed my head and I put my hand in prayer posture, which is the gesture of respect. And I said, with all due respects, Venerable Sirs, I can't find a place of integrity to participate in this ceremony. And that elicited a tremendous amount of backlash. And they wanted me to concede that by doing that, I had taken myself out of the community. Well, there's no monastic rules that suggest that what I had done was in any way inappropriate. In fact, contrary, what I was doing was very much within uh, my Vinaya rights. The monastic discipline has a code of conduct, and what I was doing was very much in accordance with what was allowed. But there was an
Hmm.
enormous backlash. I left the monastery and I was erased. I was told that they erased my Dhamma talks. There was letters of defamation that were sent around the world. One senior monk told other senior monastics not to have anything to do with me, and they withdrew their support, and I was effectively erased. So I have been in a process of continuing to teach meditation, but also to understand what happened and to understand why it is possible that a senior monk can have such deep understanding and yet be unaware of something as basic as being angry and shouting at nuns for months on end.
Wow. You know, I really do want to say that, I'm so grateful for men. There are really, really good men in this world, and we need them, especially as women. But there is there is a and okay, I'm trying to like figure out how to say this in a way that is both respectful of men, but also where we we can get into truth here because, there is something evil out there attacking both men and women, you know, and but that type of misogyny is scary, in leadership positions. It's very scary in leadership positions. And, one thing, as a Christian, somebody who wants to pattern her life after that of Jesus Christ, I have never seen Christ ever do that to women. You know what I mean? Like, I think about the time where the woman was brought to him, the 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 leaders of the synagogue had taken this woman in adultery and threw her at the feet of Jesus Christ and said, to try to bring Christ down, but also this woman, and saying that the law of Moses was that she should be stoned because she was found in adultery, right? Well, my thoughts are, well, number one, where was the guy that that she was supposed to be found with? Why wasn't he right there being thrown at the Savior's feet? Why was it her?
So one of the
Right?
things that I have to, that we have to come to terms with is that, we have laced in our history for thousands of years an undigested ill will towards the feminine, which has shown up both in terms of mindsets, in terms of culture, and in terms of laws.
Mm,
And this is not limited to any particular belief or religion or
hmm.
place
Yes, you're
on the
right.
planet. It is everywhere.
Yes, you're right.
And so, in a Buddhist tradition, there is the aim to make yourself harmless, to not speak from ill will for any reason, under any circumstances. But I think the reason why this stuff is happening in the way that it is because, like myself, I came into the monastery with a tremendous amount of conviction that the meditation practices and the discipline that we had was all that we needed in order to understand what was going on and release the patterns that were harmful. But the reality
No.
is that with things like attachment wounding and narcissistic wounding, which are related, that the kind of reveal that meditation allows often doesn't touch those places. And so,
Yes.
like in my example, I could have teachers who had very profound insight and could explain with graphic detail the nature of a mind that was free, while at the same time not have clarity or awareness of things as basic as being angry or, awareness that he was angry after shouting at the nuns over a period of months. So that disconnect between realization and basic awareness is part of what motivated me to try and find out models that understood how it's possible that these two can coexist and what is needed in order to bridge and to heal and to repair.
Well, I think that's really interesting that you're talking about this, like saying that, you know, he's sitting here talking about a mind that is free, but yet his mind is not free. And the minute that a woman's mind begins to be free, what does he do? He shuts that down. And so it's very nuanced, right? And you are absolutely talking about a narcissistic type of behavior here where, I'm the grandiose, I have this great understanding. Um, but the minute that anybody else has the stage or the floor, they have to be swept away. They have to be put in control. They have to be put in their place. And the thing that, as you're talking, that really comes out to me is that, it's not about like, men versus women. And I feel like, across religions and across, um, whether you're Buddhism, Jewish, Christian, it doesn't matter. There's like this undertone of men against women, women against men. And the truth of the matter is we're meant to work together. We're meant to complement each other. And that's not what was happening, you know?
Right. So I mean, the Buddha established an ordination for nuns and recognized that because women were in a vulnerable position, both culturally and physiologically, that nuns needed a little bit of extra support and protection so that they could coincide with the monks in a way that was mutual, respectful, and safe. So the Buddha created all kinds of provisions for that. However, for all kinds of reasons, some of which are political, some of which are historical, some of which I don't understand, the tradition that I came from limited the ordination that we were allowed to have so that we weren't actually fully ordained in the way that the Buddha had recommended, so that we didn't have those protections that he
Mm,
thought were important in order to protect us because of the ways in which this stuff tends to play out and has done for since the beginning of whenever, for thousands of years. So we had an ambiguous position legally as monastics. And so we were trying to live as monastics, and yet what we were doing was up against the challenges of the structure that we had and the ability for the senior people to do this other deep inquiry to understand where the antipathy towards the feminine was lodged and to release it. And because the meditation itself doesn't lead necessarily to that inquiry, then we were vulnerable to
Mm,
being the targets of undigested ill will towards the feminine without proper protection, defense mechanisms, or legal standing that could protect us.
yeah. Yeah. And that's honestly that has been the case throughout history.
Exactly. And so, as women, wherever we are, whatever we believe, whatever our religious beliefs are, what we need to understand is that as we do this work ourselves and as we get clear about our own attachment wounding and our own narcissistic wounding, then what that does is it frees up the energy of the anger and the anger that gets introjected so that we have the ability to engage in a way where our full capacity, our clarity, our confidence is not being interrupted by this unresolved emotional patterning that came often when we were born or in our early years because of
Mm,
the circumstances of what was going on in our formative years. So it isn't
yeah.
one's fault.
No, 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 no. Like that's actually one of the biggest things I've noticed, as in building my own business and my own brand and things, is a lot of like the things that are stopping me or holding me back is a story, right? And stories are formed from past relationships oftentimes because if you think about like a story, I'm also an author, right? And how a story is formed, is not just about one character. There are many characters playing in part in the story. It is what makes a well-rounded story. It is what makes the story so compelling. If we're only speaking of one person the whole entire time, well, that story doesn't really hold very well, does it? And we know this subconsciously. And so we tend to build these stories up, but we don't realize that it's those stories and those underlying psychological patterns that have been embedded into us that are stopping us from reaching our goals, whether it be relationally, whether it be financially, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, whatever it is, physically, right? There's a lot of things that are stopping us from meeting those goals. And so, this is why, getting into the power of the mind is so important. Especially, I feel like if we are goal oriented women, and it's like I said, this podcast is not about like bashing on men or anything like that, but it is about like understanding the underlying story, where it came from, and how to repattern or reconstruct that programming, you know?
So the way I would phrase what you were talking about, because I agree on so many levels about, what you're saying, is that we have a story about what has happened, and that
Mhm.
story is filled up with beliefs. And some of those beliefs are conscious and some of them are not conscious. And both
Mhm.
the conscious and the unconscious beliefs then shape the way we perceive ourselves and we perceive
Mhm.
others and we perceive the world. And so
Mhm.
beliefs that we have are actually not congruent with our values, then we are operating based on old models that don't serve our current situation.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And to gain any type of freedom, whether it be financially or relationally, freedom is the free like yeah, let me backtrack here for just a second. Because the history's coming up for me here in the Holocaust, right? We're talking the Holocaust victims. These were people that were chained physically. They were chained in some way emotionally. But if you read like the people that came out on the other side, like their books, after D-Day, and they were released and back into quote unquote freedom, one of the most important things I've noticed in their stories is freedom of the mind was what was key, what is kind of like the center ingredient. And something that they consistently talk about, like one of the most famous books from the Holocaust is The Hiding Place by Corey Ten Boom, right? Loved that book. It was such a good book, even though it talks about some really, really hard things and human suffering. Like it really hits the heart. But a common theme through there is, and her father taught her this, is the freedom of the mind, right?
Right. But then you see, in that situation, you have something extraordinary, which is that you have a human being whose faith is unshakable before she actually goes into this situation,
Yeah,
which
true.
is a
Yeah.
nightmare. And so when a person's faith is unshakable, when they know beyond a shadow of a doubt, in that case, it was Christian, so her language was God, and the presence of God was everywhere. She was protected in some way from forming false views based on the unmetabolization of the horror of what was around her.
Hmm.
And I've also heard stories, and they are also remarkably rare, of people being in that kind of magnitude of suffering where they wake up to the possibility of freedom and what is unshakable, even in the midst of that kind of horror.
Mm,
But the reason why spiritual centers and monasteries usually are beautiful and clean and nice and caring and kind is for a large majority of people. They need a whole lot more support to be
yes,
able to do this work and wake up to what is innate, the beauty, the power, the love, the spaciousness, the peacefulness, the clarity, the unperturbability. It requires loving, caring support.
it does. It does. But so I'm gonna throw a but in here because you are correct. Like community is such a major thing. As a Christian, I completely believe that one of the things that we take with us in the next life is not money. It's not our homes. It's not our cars. Obviously we leave all that stuff behind. But I do believe that we take with us the people that we loved here, right? We take relationships with us, and therefore I feel like that is like one of the most rich places to be. But I also, one of the things that I'm very, very intentional about teaching is the relationship with God, or in this case, universe, all the love that is there, the relationship with love, and then the relationship with self are key. Because there are times, and I know you've experienced this, I've experienced this. There are times in our life where we are alone. You know what I mean? And if we are basing our freedom on support of other people, that's kind of dangerous, in my opinion. I feel like, in my personal opinion, we need to be able to base our freedom in that of the love that the universe has for us, and in my case, the love that God has for me. And then let that come down into the love I have for myself, because those are things that cannot be taken away. They are constant.
So, this is the challenge, and it is a profound challenge. because even when there is deep and profound insight into what you're describing,
Mm-hmm.
in your language, the love of God, in my language, the innate capacity of love to emanate through me.
Mm-hmm.
Either language, whether it's from Buddhist or it's from Christian or it's from any other religious perspective, there is a profound experience of love that we can tap into.
Oh,
That
yes.
that is
Yes.
that is genuine, that is verifiable, that is
Yes.
irrefutable. Okay.
Yes.
But the challenge is this, that when we have attachment wounding, when we have narcissistic wounding, our access to that love is intermittent, which means that it doesn't deny the fact that we have had that insight. It means that our ability to access it, to know it, to touch it, to feel it, to have it actually fill us is variable depending on where we are in our attachment, narcissistic wounding healing journey,
Mm-hmm.
how active those things are, and whether they are occluding our capacity to feel love. Let me tell you a personal story.
Sure.
By the time I went to the monastery, I had already had enough insight to know that these fundamental truths was really who I was. So I
Mm-hmm.
knew that,
Mm-hmm.
but I hadn't done my attachment repair work.
Mm.
And so what that meant, or the way that showed up, is that I felt that fundamentally I was bad, or there was something about me that was wrong,
Yeah, and that's something that's across religions too.
because it's not religious.
Yeah, it's
It's not religious.
exactly.
It's a personality formation about how we view ourselves in relationship to the world.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so it wasn't until, even with insight, and even as a meditation teacher, and even as somebody who could speak eloquently about how love is pervasive and it's innate, because I'd experienced it, that experiencing of it did not resolve the attachment wounding that allowed me to come to the conclusion that there was something about me that was bad and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was only when I did attachment repair work, which is a
Mm-hmm.
particular kind of work that actually deals with this particular way these patterns form,
Yes.
that shifted.
Yep.
And that's no longer my baseline. It's not something that comes up anymore.
No, no, because the thing is, and another thing I say a lot is people don't behave above their self-belief. They
Say that
don't.
again. I'm sorry.
People, people don't behave above their self-belief. And so someone who believes deep, horrible things about themselves, like let's take your meditation teacher as a prime example, right? He's someone who's actually dealing with a major insecurity. He's attached to um, a belief about self that is harmful. It hurts, but he doesn't want to admit that. He doesn't want to see that. He doesn't want to acknowledge it. And so he comes out as this great, amazing teacher, which he was. He really understood the meditation pieces very well. But down deep inside, what was really rooted was an inability to really see himself and to really love himself.
So
Because,
that's for me, that's the conundrum with the narcissistic and attachment,
oh yeah, oh
because
yeah,
with it is so deep. It is so
yeah,
deep, and it happens at such an early age. And the meditation, which allows us to reflect on mind states, does not readily reveal the patterning that gets set in place with
yeah.
attachment wounding, and doesn't reveal the wounding from narcissistic uh, wounds, and the deep hole, the deep sense of emptiness, that it's an emptiness devoid of warmth, rather than the emptiness that is the emptiness that we experience when we see that there isn't anything fundamentally intrinsic that isn't changing.
Well, you know, yeah, exactly. Exactly. And what I'm saying here is it's a whole lot like, I was talking about this exact thing to a client just the other day, and I was telling her it's a whole lot like kind of holding a bath towel in front of you and you're completely naked, you can hold it down to the bottom side of you, but then your top half is exposed. You're like, ah! So you pull it up and you hold the bath towel above you, but now your bottom half is exposed. Ah! Right? And the thing is it's an overcompensation for what we really believe. And this is what narcissism is that bath towel consistently moving, trying, don't look here, don't look here, because it's they feel really, really vulnerable. They only want you to focus on the bath towel, right? But the problem is the bath towel's always moving. And so the thing is, like, I totally get what you're saying because we do need that support and we do need to tap into love because I did that healing from, generations of narcissistic patterning, like literally. And I think a lot of us are dealing with that. Just it's not just like husbands or parents or we're talking a generational thing here. But I healed on my own. And when people are like, well, hold on, you didn't go to therapy for this? I went to therapy and the therapists were great to a large extent, but it wasn't until I tapped into how much I really deserved love and gave that a place and a possibility that I was able to start unraveling my own attachment disorders, right?
So I think for different people, they're starting at different places.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And so for myself, my interest is to encourage people to start where they're at and to figure out what's the next step for them.
Mm,
Certainly, I do resonate that when a person then is able to connect with the importance of feeling love and allowing that in, that's a major turning point. But for some people, they need a few steps before they can get there.
mm,
That's not the next step for them. And so I celebrate you and the fact that you've done as much healing as you have, and you've been able to do this in the way that you have. But I know for many of my students, and I know for many of the people that I speak to that are not my students, and I know from other meditation teachers who also describe a similar patterning, which is that as meditation teachers, they know the Dhamma deeply. They know what, and paths to access freedom. And yet there are places in their own um, psyche, heart, mind patterning that are resistant to the very things that they're speaking about. And that's the reason why, for me, it has been part of my process of healing and alchemizing the harm that I've been through, that I feel grateful for some of the work that I'm bringing into the world, the integrated
mm.
meditation program and the trauma-informed satipatthana, which is looking at classical meditation instructions from the lens of how to do it from a trauma-informed perspective.
Yes. And I think that's important. Like I really do, whether you're just barely starting this process in healing or whether you've done a lot of work already. And I would say that the listeners in this podcast are probably more on the other side of that spectrum where they've done a lot of like trauma healing and self-discovery already, right? But you are absolutely right. Like there are, if you're right at the very beginning of a healing journey, you are looking for people that are gonna affirm to you that you are worth something, and that is really important that you do find those people. And even, me, like I've been doing trauma healing in myself for not as long as you, but but for a long time, we're talking 15, possibly 20 years at this point, where my healing journey started. And I can say that people are important no matter where you're at. There's a reason why, you know, the most important things that the things that we do take with us in the next life are the relationships and the connections that we have to people, the love that we have. That stems not only in this life, but it stems in spirituality, it stems in all eternity, right? No matter where you're at, love is a constant. And so when we're able to tap into that, whether that be through, other people, which is very, very important. It is very important. Finding the support systems. You want to find support systems when you're in, when you've been doing healing and you're further along in your journey. Support is important. My point is just that be open to also realizing that there are times in life that you are going to walk your journey alone, you know,
I mean,
and
that's
it,
absolutely true.
yeah,
Absolutely. I completely concur. But alone is also a very relative term. So
yes,
I remember I remember
yes,
when I was traveling in India in my 20s, and traveling alone in India, what that meant is that you just didn't know who you would be traveling with. Okay.
hmm.
Because you were never alone, ever alone in India.
No, you're never really alone. That is true. Yes,
And
yes,
so the strangers who were around, you know, they would show up and be participating in ways that would be also not expected. So I didn't plan it. I sometimes didn't even know their names, but they could show up with presence and kindness and compassion in ways that were meaningful to me and participating and contributing to that particular part of the journey. The other thing for me is that nature has been a phenomenal part of my own process in healing. You know,
mm,
for a while I lived in Colorado and I was living next to the Garden of the Gods. And the Garden of the Gods is in a rock
it is
formation.
beautiful. I've been there. Yes.
I think it's 180 million year old rocks. Like they were the first of the Rocky Mountains. We're on the third set of Rocky Mountains. You know, and I would go and I would just press my body into the rocks and I'd let, you know, nothing I had would shake them. Like no amount of upset or distress would move those rocks. And it was inevitable, you know, that I would lean against the rocks. My mind would soften and drop into a place where it was like a portal, where I would go to a place that was big enough to hold everything that I was experiencing
Hmm.
without reacting to it. And then it would shift from me having a difficult experience to me observing the difficult experience to me relaxing in this mind that was open and loving and spacious and holding. And that was actually more who I was. And these experiences were like ripples on the top of the
Yeah.
ocean where they had
Yeah.
very, very little impact.
Well, there's a reason why I think nature is so healing. To me, it's like a temple, it's being with the gods. But, I love what you're saying here and the idea that you're right. We really are never alone. If you understand the nature of love, you can't ever be alone. But I know like sometimes in entrepreneurship or in motherhood or anything that women do, and I feel like women especially, they come up and like, oh my gosh, I'm completely alone in this, right? There is that feeling. And I want and then this is kind of where I'm going with this. When we set goals, and I think even especially as women, when we set goals, there is sometimes a very large thread of aloneness in that goal, having to achieve it alone, right? Because in a sense, aloneness can be also an attachment disorder. Feeling completely alone is possibly something that stemmed from your childhood. When we're sitting here like trying to build a business and you're feeling like y you you're the only one that can hold it up. You're the only one that can do it. That's an alone type of a mentality. And I want you, and as we're chatting, and I'd love to hear you talk to this too, because we do want to talk about like how, you know, undoing some of these attachment disorders and attachment theories help you gain momentum, help you gain relationships, and help you gain your goals, right? Because ultimately, we don't want to do things alone. We don't want to do things alone. The whole reason why we build businesses, the whole reason why we have families, the whole reason we get into entrepreneurship is never because we wanted to do it alone. Never.
So Thank you for that question. And I think if you are amenable, what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about what I understand attachment formation to be, because when I lay that out, then it makes it a little bit clear what we need to do in order to shift it. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I understand attachment formation to be the patterns that form in response to the presence or the absence of five fundamental qualities. And they are protection and safety is
Mm-hmm.
one,
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
attunement is the second,
Mm-hmm.
comfort and soothing is the third,
Mm-hmm.
delight in you as an individual and delight in you in the essence is the fourth, and encouragement both to express yourself and to explore is the fifth. So when those qualities or those pairs of qualities are present in a certain amount, not a ton, not 100%, like 30% of the time, you know, then we form what is known as secure attachment with our primary caregivers. So I just want to take a moment in case there are any Buddhists who are listening, because this word of attachment is different from the Buddhist word of attachment. The Buddhist word of attachment is related to attachment to greed, hatred, and delusion, and it is the fundamental cause for the suffering that we experience. This attachment, the psychological term for attachment, is the attachment that we have with our primary caregivers, and it is a fundamental cause for our lack of suffering, our health, our happiness, and our well-being, both as children, as young adults, and our life going forward. So the same word has very different meanings.
Mm-hmm.
But in the presence of those five qualities, we learn to trust ourselves. We learn to trust that other people have our back, that we don't have to figure everything out by ourselves, that they can help us make sense out of things. We learn to trust that we can explore, we can play. We learn to trust both how to attune, we learn how to attune,
Mm-hmm.
and, and that learning how to attune lets us recognize what's going on in ourselves so that we can respond, but it also helps us recognize what's going on with someone else. So when we have healthy attachment, we can expect a low level of basic fear and anxiety, low levels of cortisols, an ability to track what's going on in ourselves, an ability to
Agreed.
track what's going on with other people, relationships that are themselves secure, and a capacity to imagine, to create, to play. And none of that has like big, huge obstacles in it. When we didn't have enough of those five qualities, or when our primary caregivers harmed us, or when there were ruptures and there were not repair, then we developed strategies to cope. Those
Yes.
strategies are adaptive.
Mm-hmm.
They were designed to keep us safe. And so we need to be grateful that they did a good job in keeping us safe.
Yep. I
But
agree.
those safety mechanisms shifted our ability to feel safe and protected,
Mm-hmm.
shifted our capacity to attune to ourselves and to others, shifted our ability to comfort and soothe ourselves. Sometimes we had no experience of delight or little experience of delight, and radically interfered with our ability to explore, to play, and to trust. And there is an entire cascade of consequences, physiological consequences that raise our cortisol level, that have us on vigilance, looking for danger everywhere, interpreting the world from the lens that things are out to get me or that I'm not safe.
Yeah.
An inability to track what's going on, to ask for what we need, to know what we need, an ability to understand what's happening for others, to make sense of it, to respond appropriately. It can impact our health. This is often the root of addictive behavior.
Yep. You're
It,
right.
it's often our processing speed is logarithmically impacted by the level of attachment we've got. So the kind of attachment strategies that we have, the more disorganized they are, more logarithmically we are not able to track what's going on in ourselves or in other people, which means that our processing speed reduces by a factor of 10 at each step that we go.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. Wow. See, love
And
this.
and so that okay, so that when we understand that this is like the way all of this got set up, then it helps make some sense about why meditation is not the only thing that you need in order to shift it.
I would agree. Yes.
And so what the integrated meditation program has done is it takes the three pillars of collaboration, of mentalization, and of ideal support. Mentalization is a psychological term that includes meditation, but it expands beyond it. And ideal support is imagining ideal support beings. They could be parents or guardians
Mm-hmm.
that have exactly what we need so that we feel safe and protected, so that we
Mm-hmm.
get the attunement that we need, so that we can feel comfort and soothing, so that they delight in us in exactly the way that is what feels the best,
You're right.
so that they
Right.
encourage us to investigate, to explore, and to play. So when we front load those five qualities in abundance, then it makes our systems neuroplastic and the patterns start shifting.
I love
And,
it.
and so, because the patterns formed in the absence of those five qualities, when we bring forward those five qualities, then they start shifting and we begin to feel the experience of what it's like to live knowing that we are safe and protected. We can attune to ourselves and to others. We know how to comfort, soothe ourselves. We can experience delight in who we are fundamentally, and that we can be creative, imaginative, and explore. And as we do this, then after a period of time, something shifts and the patterns shift. They're not temporary, they shift.
Yeah. And they do. They do because I've actually gone through that myself, right? And you talk about like those three pillars. I talk about it as understanding where your perfection is, right? And being able to sit in that for just a few minutes. And when you guys can do this type of work, it's really amazing to see what shifts not only in your life and in your relationships, but as a result, what shifts in your business. So if you guys have been sitting here thinking to yourself, like, how can I hit that next level? And you feel like there's that glass ceiling that you just cannot punch through, think about, what kind of a thing you might be working against that is threatening your safety, because it's usually right there where you can find the weak link in the glass. Thank you, Alma, so much for being here and discussing with us about attachment and how attachment can also be it can hold us back from our goals, but in the ways that in ways that we can use our minds and our glorious being self, and really, really tapping into self and that love, helping us, achieve the goals and the dreams that we set out to aspire to. Like this is a really good conversation. I loved it. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom.
Thank you for your warm welcome. And I have also enjoyed this very much.
If people want to chat with you and learn more about meditation, because guys, I will tell you something. Meditation, like she is right, meditation is not the only thing, but it is also such a very, very powerful tool. And it's wonderful in helping you achieve your next goal. So if you guys are looking to understand meditation on a deeper level, check out Amma. Where do they find you?
So, awakeningtruth.org is the name of the website. And I'm coming out of a health health process. And so I'm not as active as I have been, but I have been on Facebook, on Instagram, and I've got YouTube videos. Some of the platforms are under Awakening Truth, and some of them are under my name. Like the YouTube is under Ama Tanasathi. And so the YouTube has some guided meditations and some talks and more things. And then the Awakening Truth website has a page about the integrated meditation program. And so if that interests you, I would invite you to have a look and explore further.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Amma. Go check her out, my fabulous listeners. And until next time, we'll see you soon. Bye.
All right, Boundary Boss Babes. I'm super excited that you tuned in with me today. Make sure you tune in again next week as we chat about more Boundary Boss Babe topics. We're going to get into so many other things about how to set boundaries with your business, how to set boundaries with your relationships, so you can truly have the time, the money, and the flexibility that you are seeking. So tune in next week. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast. Let your other Boss Babe friends know about it. And also, if you've got any questions, make sure you submit them into the podcast by clicking on the Send Us a Text message at the bottom of the podcast description. I look forward to seeing you guys next week. See you later, Boss Babes.